is you've got the ability to change views. So once again, it's the concept of underneath it's the same list, so it's the same model, but we can pull it up either as a map or as a state list, and then you can change the, as you click the different states, they update. So it's kind of a fun little use. As I said, actually I did 2 pages on this site in Angular. So. All right, yeah, and my note here. I did put too much code in my controller on that one. I need to modularize it. So, one other way that you can use Angular, kind of as maybe just starting, they've got actually a really nice form validation mechanism where you can go in and declare input fields as such as required or as an email, and it ends up getting flags whether or not it's valid or dirty, and then basically you can use this just with even a standard submit button. So you can use Angular to declare what you want the validations to be, and use whatever other mechanisms, the submit back to the server when it's valid. So I do have an example, but all right, I'm going to speed it up. Directives. Okay, so far we've talked about the magic of wiring it and so forth. There's also this whole magic of enhancing the HTML, changing the DOM, and basically everything that's being changed, being rewritten by Angular is through a directive. And basically, it's a name that when Angular sees this name in the DOM, it calls the directive code to do something. The name can appear as a name, an element name, an element attribute. There's also class and comments. Those are a little more specialized. But just to give an idea, there's over 50 directives that they provide in the library. You can write your own. Talk about that. One of them that actually what we just mentioned about form, that is an Angular directive. There's all sorts of things we can find. Actually, one of my favorite directives is ng repeat. And, oh, come on. There we go. And so I'm actually going to go into one of the examples here in the Angular documentation. The ng repeat, let's see, right here is the use of that. Do I need to make that bigger?
Yes.
Yep. Good enough? One more?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So this is ng repeat. So what this is doing, it has a whole syntax, and actually Angular has a whole expression language that you can take advantage of, within these quotes to do things. But in this case, what we're doing with the repeat is we have a variable called friends, and here we've initialized friends to be an array, so that's the open bracket, of 2 objects. The first object has a name of John and an age of 25. The second one, age of 28, name of Mary. So it's got 2 objects in there. And what the repeat is doing is it's saying what we want to do is reference that model data called friends, and we want to basically step through it one at a time. So the friend is going to be bound to each instance in that array, and it's going to duplicate the li and everything inside of it for each one of the instances of that data. And when it gets into each of the instances, one of the things we see here is here's the mustache markup. $index is a specialized variable that they introduce. $sign is what Angular uses to indicate variables that they inject into the system. So index is the index of the value in the array. But here we can access friend.name. So friend is pointing to the object, and .name is the value within the object. And so friend who is friend.age years old. And what we see down below here, the demo, I have 2 friends and it lists them. Now, we can go and run this if we, and one of the nice things, they do give you access to be able to pull these up live. And so, let's see, we need, what do I put for an age here?
20.
15.
20, okay. So I have Keaton as a friend, and he's 20 years old. Now, what's interesting, also, all what I did was change the data. Notice it's the friends.length has automatically recalculated. Nothing else I had to do. And it's added another element in the UL, another LI list item.
To go back to your question, you could use essentially this as well if you don't want to make a JSON call.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
That's exactly what I was talking
right.
about.
Okay.
That's exactly my question with that right there.
Okay. Now, one thing, there are some things like ng init. It's an interesting. It's interesting for test cases, for playing around. But even the Angular team says you probably don't use this in a full-up application, because there's better ways to do it when you get into the code inside your controller and so forth. But for test cases, it's quick, and there might be a few things that you might find. But this is pretty powerful. I mean, this is all the code. There's no other files behind this. We've included Angular. We've just created in the scope that's already been provided, so it would have been the root scope, a variable with friends, an array, and repeated it. Pretty straightforward. I mean, I love repeat. It's just, it's amazing what it does, and there's also things that it does where it's creating different scopes and so forth. Also, one thing that becomes also powerful here, and they're called filters in Angular. And filters, there's 2 uses for filters. One is formatting displayed data. The other is filtering and sorting these data arrays. So what these look like, and the reason I bring these up on the repeat, the sorting and filtering is something you definitely want to be able to take advantage of. So let's see here. So the way filtering works, this is another example, but basically when we go to search, and this is live, so as I type in, any part of the name or the number, all of them have 555, but how many of them have 551? So it's automatically keeping it up to date. All what we've done here, here's the repeat. So the ng repeat, friend and friends in this case, and then this pipe is indicating we have a filter. Okay, so or a filter, and the filter happens to be named filter. Okay, that's a little misleading that they have a filter named filter, but so the concept of a filter, named filter, and they're binding this filter to a variable called search, which search is something that we enter here, which let's see, actually, I'm sorry, we're on this one here. There's 2 different ones, because this second one is an object-based search, which does a deeper level of comparison. This first one that we're doing is just looking for search text. So the ng model, we have a value that we type into search text, and it now is binding the filter to that search text. So as you noticed, as I typed it, it filtered the list based on anything that met the filter. Let's see, there's also then another one that's used is the order by, and this is where, let's see, the predicate, you can just, you sort by age, sort by phone number, those sorts of things. And this is just adding, here's the repeat with the friends and friend, adding on the order by, and you can specify the predicate. And you can either put strings in. I mean, this is all part of this expression. You kind of have to learn a little bit about the expression language. If it's got quotes, it's actually a value. Like if you wanted to sort explicitly always by age, you could just put quote age in there and it'll do that. In this case, they're actually letting you define it elsewhere. So it's being passed in as a value that gets interpreted at runtime. So, oh, and then the other, so there's two styles of filters. Those filters that go against arrays are useful mostly on like the repeat type of use. And then there's also, here's the number format where you're just able to say, here's a value I want to display, and they have one they call currency. And so as you type, put a value in, it changes and displays it as currency. So there's different filters you can do. And by the way, one of the things that's also cool about Angular is all of these things that we're showing you, the filters and the directives and everything, you can write your own. So they basically are using the same API that they bring forward, to us to be able to augment the system ourselves. So if you need your own filters, you write them, and there's code in the development library to do that. Let's see, can I wrap it up here? What else do we have? Oh, all right. Let's see how fast I can talk. Services. This is another architectural idea that, in a lot of times on servers, you like to compartmentalize your code into reusable pieces, and a service is kind of the architectural name for that. And they've brought that to Angular. The nice thing is they can exist across views, so you can load a service once, have it hold data, and keep changing the displays for the user, and the data is maintained in the view. You can also set up dependencies and so forth. Let's see, what do I have? Oh yeah. All right, I'm gonna, sorry, I'm touching the, okay, there we go. Quick, oh, come on.
Is there a possible way you can keep on going?
Yeah.
Slides.
We can probably do your demo next meetup.
I don't have time. So, that's fine.
We can continue.
Okay.
I'm
So,
just trying to be respectful of everybody else's time.
so, I mean, either way, I'm flexible. I'm 2/3 of the way done.
Okay.
Still speed up?
Huh?
Can we still speed up?
Yes, I'll speed up.
And you presented 7 minutes? Yeah, I'll have to go through still.
I'll see what I can do. Basically, all right, here. The HTTP is another service. I was just showing what kind of the use of it. $HTTP is the service. You pass in what you want it to get. So like in this case, the method get, what URL. It returns something called a promise. And promises are a whole nother topic. It's a functional way to pass back asynchronous results. And anyway, the nice thing is you can call your HTTP methods on the server, and when it comes back, it's either success or error, and you specify on success what do you want it to do, on error what do you want it to do. There's a demo. You can go to these demos here and run these. Yeah, the promises. Promises, it's actually, there's a couple ways that you can get data back from asynchronous operations. I mean, your standard way is you specify some sort of event handler and tie it to the event of it, the result returning. Now, that's probably what's happening underneath, but what a promise is it's now an object that represents the eventual completion of that. And a promise either gets rejected or resolved, and what you do is you can say, when this promise is resolved, I want to do this function on it. So there's kind of an event type model underlying it, but it's actually nice because there's composition and other things you can do when you get into functional programming. Okay, we won't go there. But also one thing that's really key with these services is the concept of dependency injection. And that's another architectural pattern. So there's a lot of things that they're trying to bring to the whole client-side development that become key in developing a large app. And so dependency injection is you're separating your concerns, and the creation of a service is independent from the usage. So all what you need to do is specify that we want a service injected into a piece of code, and Angular takes care of the wiring. It wires things in the correct order such that a service that depends on another service will make sure that the dependent on service is instantiated first. And that becomes key when you're writing big applications. Trying to load JavaScript in the right order and get things executing in the right order becomes a nightmare when you're trying to combine your JavaScript into a single file to help load times. This takes care of the wiring in the correct order. Also, the substitution is important. Let's see. Okay, this one I'm going to skip. We'll skip that one. Sorry, it's. Okay. It is one thing that's important to note. Angular is pure JavaScript, so it's written completely on JavaScript, which, good or bad, JavaScript's what we have to work on the browser. It's actually an interesting language when you get down to it. Prototype-based scripting, it's dynamic, weakly type, first-class functions. First-class functions are really key. You really start using functions with Angular to handle the asynchronous returns and passing functions into your scopes so that things happen. If you love functions, you'll love Angular. If you don't love functions, well, you'll get used to them. Actually, a great JavaScript book that I like is JavaScript: The Good Parts, and I know the front-end masters, they actually had Crockford here, which that's awesome that we're able to get that type of person here. But dependency injection the Angular apps, one of the things about writing Angular apps is what about finding errors? I mean, JavaScript doesn't have a compiler, so you have to execute your code to test. And Misko, one of actually the creator of Angular, he's previously worked on, I think he might have been the creator of JS Test Driver. So testability was a fundamental concern. So that was something that when he looked at Angular, he wanted to make sure that this could be a great environment. And testing is a whole nother topic. I know in the front-end masters presentation, Misko, half of it I think was on testing. So Angular supports a lot of testing, the unit testing. Dependency injection becomes important there because what you're able to do is you're able to substitute in a mock for the hard-to-test code. So instead of having to actually connect to a server, when you're doing your testing, you just hook in for that low-level like $HTTP, you say, this is what I want you to use for this testing. And it knows, you know exactly what it's going to return because you've coded it there. So this whole dependency injection and testing, it really go hand in hand. They have other capabilities in there. Okay. Web apps, try to get single pages. You're changing the views dynamically. And Angular templates. Templates in Angular, it's what you're declaring what your view is. Think of it, it's basically HTML, and you've added into the HTML directives, markups, filters, and form controls. Those are the things that Angular, when it compiles the HTML, it's looking for that markup for you. And templates, with a single page, it loads it. There's also ways that you dynamically load, and that comes into URL routing, which is the mapping from a URL to a view. Also, which controller you want. So a lot of the examples you've seen bind controllers actually in the HTML. If you follow the MVC pattern, you really don't want your view to know about the controller. So this is a place in your code where you're actually saying, no, I want to hook for this controller, or this view, I want this controller hooked in. And so it's moving those separations for your bigger programs. But yeah, this is specifying when you see on the URL a /book followed by some value, display this template, which is the code that's being loaded into the view, and use this controller. So it also has ways that it's substituting in values so that you have access to the value that was on the address line there. And it's important when you get into deep linking, allowing people to be able to click on a link and get into your app at the appropriate place. So like if you have a certain address that includes the actual data value, it'll bring it up in the app with that value automatically loaded. And that's part of what all this route handling can happen. Oh, directives. You can create your own directives. All right. Modules, it's a way to modularize your code. All right. Summary now. The AngularJS, it is open source, MIT license, built by Google and the community. 1.0 released last June, 1.06 current. The way that you know 1.0, the 1.0.x are considered stable production. There is a 1.1 that's out there, and that's the unstable development, and that's where you're seeing what's coming up in the future. It's available on a content delivery network, so both versions, both the 1.1 and the 1.0. This was the jQuery integration, so just include jQuery before, and you're good. Okay, what about browsers? This is always one of the questions that come up. You're basically good on anything called a modern browser. So IE9 and basically everything else. All right, what's the bad news? Well, IE8 officially supported, but you have to do a little bit of custom. All right, more than a little bit? Yeah.
So, a little?
All right.
Welcome to hell.
Yeah. But you can get there, right? With IE8?
Yeah,
you can get there, okay. IE6 and 7, in theory, but I think if you really have a need to support IE7, you're probably not looking at Angular. Yeah. There's a Bugger plugin, Jasmine plugin. There's other libraries. AngularJS UI is actually a set of functionality that is written by separate people. They're actually quite useful. I'm actually using the UI router right now. It allows you to have a state-based approach for driving your user interface. It's actually pretty good. And other blog forums. You know, there's some books coming out. There's, as far as I know, no books yet. The first one is April 29th. You can actually get it on, you can pre-order on Amazon, I've noticed. And then there's another one, fall of 2000. First couple chapters are available in the Manning MEEP program, early access program. Training, there is, ACAD.io is a source, okay.
That's like the best source out there. That's a godsend for anybody who wants to learn this.
Yep. So it's video training. So, and then front-end masters, you know, they, the one thing he pointed out, it was recorded before Angular 1.0 went live. And so the issue that you have is some of the syntax changed. That's, you know, but otherwise concepts are good. It actually is a good, he let me have access and it's like, yeah, I wish I would have had it. And there's JavaScript good parts. I'm going to watch that one yet. So that's front-end masters.
And then later on this fall, the jQuery in Action guy who's writing jQuery in Action will probably be here in Minnesota. So
yeah. This is amazing that we have this happening in Minnesota. So the announced futures, actually the one I'm excited about, animation support. One of the things people have been beating up the Angular team is how do you animate from one page to another? Well, in the 1.1 release, there's now ng animate, and it lets you specify, in conjunction with CSS, animated transitions. And you basically just drop in a directive, ng animate, tell it how you want it to work, add your CSS. It looks pretty sweet. You know, if that's all you have to do animated transitions. So, and there's some other things that there, you know, these are all the things that that I've been able to find about what's coming up. So, anyway, I kind of like to quote by Misko, you know, Angular, it's what a web browser would have been had it been designed for web applications, you know, which is true. This, you know, the power that they're giving you, it just makes sense. It's almost so simple. And actually, I know you had sent a link about Google having a new, they're making a new web engine, a new,
yeah.
I wonder how much it's...
Blink.
Blink.
Yeah.
I wonder, it's going to be interesting
by
what happens with Angular and Blink, if there's something going on there.
The ES6 script is also being worked on with the Angular guys, so...
Okay.
yeah,
So...
I mean, the data binding and stuff will be built into the browser, and basically Angular will use the native data binding if it can, and then it'll fall back to the library for browsers that don't support native data binding and stuff like that. So
I heard
that's how it's going to work.
I heard a rumor that SharePoint kind of is getting on board with a little bit too.
Did you?
Yeah, that was just a rumor though. Somebody said at a SharePoint conference.
I'd like to have a quick show of hands. How many of you know that within your organization or your client's organization they are maintaining huge JavaScript code to do some of these things that can be just readily available with few lines? Thousands and thousands of lines of JavaScript code is being maintained.
Yeah, you end up being able to push that coding down to the browser, and the server just becomes your data source then. It's actually pretty cool to be able to write apps this way. So, yeah. So, also, I have kind of this same presentation that I was going to do, maybe a little more code-oriented. The Google Development Group, they have weekly meeting or monthly meetings. It's May 1st at Cocoa. So basically, if you've seen this presentation, it'll be similar. I probably won't hit as much of the concepts. I'll try to do a little more code in that one. So,
Thank you.
so thank you.
Dan, do you want to?
Yeah, let's
do a quick?
Demo.
Okay.
Come on.
If anybody is game for sticking around for a little bit, here's a demo of live applications that they're building. We have probably 10 minutes.
shut off the video though.
That video, can we shut off? We as a client have.
Yeah. Sorry. I got